Welcome to Accelerate OC, the only show focused on the people leading innovation in Orange County. Join our host, Kerry Ransom, in his conversations with the trendsetters, entrepreneurs, investors, and leaders here, because it's time to Accelerate OC.
Welcome to Accelerate OC. I'm Kerry Ransom, and today I have my new friend, new-ish. We've gotten to know each other over the last few months. Niall McSheffrey is here with me today, and Niall is a recent transplant to Orange County, and so we always love when new folks come in with great outside perspective. And he moved here from Hong Kong, and he has been a career operator, mainly in the technology industry in a number of different roles, who has turned now into becoming a venture capitalist and has a new fund called Elementz Ventures. So quick intro to Niall there. Niall, great to have you on Accelerate OC, and really great to have you here in Orange County now.
Well, happy to be here. Happy to be so close yet so far on these crazy days. So yeah, thanks for having me on, Kerry.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get to the starting line. Why don't you give us a quick intro to really how you ended up in Orange County, and also how you ended up deciding to start a VC firm.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. I came out of the nonprofit space about 12 years ago and worked for this large digital agency in Arizona. And I was selling, actually during the last recession, we were selling digital services, and we were super expensive. The guys who owned this VC or this digital agency were super smart. They had a great reputation, and we were really, really expensive even back then. And I realized I could probably do this cheaper with a team offshore. And so I had a friend who moved to the Philippines, and he said, "Hey, listen, we got some developers over here." And at the time, I actually got laid off because of the times, with the recession back then, and quickly started my own company. And we just started doing the similar work to what this agency did, with cheaper labor overseas. And we really had this idea of, a rising tide raises all ships. And we wanted to build the economy in the Philippines. And basically had this company with one employee, one contract, one client. And we were, starting off like that. And over the years, we were able to build it to about 50 employees, a couple $1 million a year in revenue. And it was quite exciting because we went from being a service outsourcing company to agencies to being a really our own product agency. And we learned so much along the way. We learned so much about how startups work, where startups can succeed and where they can fail. And unfortunately, a lot of the ideas we had weren't that great. And we obviously were doing a service to build these products, but some of them were amazing. And some of them we really wanted to have a piece of. And we found a way to have equity in some of these. But really, what I learned over the years was, wouldn't it be great to be on the other side of this and being an investor? And so in the meantime, I met my wonderful wife, Sarah, over in Hong Kong. I was traveling over to the Philippines a lot and spent some time in Hong Kong, and had moved over there and just continued to operate my company from Hong Kong, and had been around a lot of smart people in the investment space, and really, worked hard on the next phase of my business life. And it was to start to be on the investor side as a venture capitalist. So that's kind of the evolution of how we got started.
Very interesting. So called Elementz Ventures, and you are still in the early stages of this. So you relocated here to Orange County. From what we've talked about off the air, you really felt like this area, Southern California, was a particularly good place to plant, but also you're fairly broad and open as to how you think about where to invest. So why don't you share a little bit more about sort of your strategy for the fund, and then certainly would love to get your thoughts as well on, we're in a really challenging time that we haven't seen certainly for 10 years. So would love to get your thoughts on sort of the state of the investor market from where you sit, at least right now. So let's talk about being here in SoCal, and how you think about investing, and then also the state. So I'm
Sure.
throwing a bunch of questions in front of you.
Yeah, well, let me tell you a little. I'll tell you a little about the fund first, and kind of what
Sure.
our mandate is, and why why I end up here in Orange County. And so, I'm a software guy, so I know SaaS, I know software development, I know mobile apps, I know e-commerce, I know enterprise. I'm not really a hardware or bio or life sciences guy, but that's what I know really well. And so, from an investment side, we set up a strategy to be focused on SaaS-based startups, disruptive startups.
I like those too.
Using SaaS technology, right? Which again is if you know that space well, I mean, you really know how to find the right kind of companies. And so, about a year and a half ago, we set up our whole thesis or our mandate. Started the fund over in Asia, in Hong Kong, and looked for some seed capital, which we had in Asia to start the fund up. We started raising in March with our fund, and started looking at companies as well, startups to invest in. And so. We started raising right when the protests started in Hong Kong, which was a very interesting time to start raising. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but we went through, a little bit of an evolution in what we were looking for and the types of startups we were interested in. And over the last year, 2019, we vetted 600 startups and have a top 15 list of startups we think are compelling, not just to meet our thesis, but we really would have a chance of being successful in the long term for, if we invest in them. So we feel like we got the process for deal flow right. We're still in process of raising, and in the midst of it, my wife got a green card, and we're like, she's a lawyer over there, but really, we realized, we hadn't spent much time back here, so let's, continue back here. And the default place for any venture capitalist to be is in Silicon Valley.
Sure. And
that's not where I want to be at all. And I'm from Santa Monica. And so, because of family reasons, was like, well, I'll just go a little further south. I love Orange County. It's a great place to raise a family.
Sure.
And Carrie, it just, serendipity is a strange thing, and ended up, within 10 minutes away from UCI. Had a chance always to meet you and a bunch of other, great people who really have the same kind of vision that I have as far as investing in these early stage companies that we want to see become successful. And so decided to take the next step here. And doesn't mean I'm not in Hong Kong or up in San Francisco or in New York. I mean, we're talking to limited partners all over the world. But to be working from here is actually quite a luxury. That's right. And I don't want to be in the middle of the clutter. I want to be in a place where there's space to operate. And I think there is plenty of space here in Orange County. The good news as well, we got connected into Evo Nexus, and there's some great companies there. And even in the different Orange County networks, we're seeing a lot of local companies here that we think would be quite compelling to fit into our thesis as well. So that's kind of the long story how I end up here.
That's great. Great perspective.
Right. The status right now. So look at where we are right now is quite interesting, because everything gets kind of ground to a halt like 3 weeks ago. I mean, it just stopped. It wasn't like this kind of like, hey, wait and see. It was like everybody just closed the doors, right?
It literally was. Yeah. I mean, to me, it wasn't even like a tail. It was straight down.
I remember having a coffee meeting like a few days after it started, and we were like, well, can we go to Starbucks? Can we actually sit outside? Will they let us sit outside? Which they did, and then Starbucks closed the next day.
Yeah.
So then, there's no more meetings, and here we are in the middle of raising a fund, and all of our raising is involved in relationships with limited partners who really need to get to know us, so that we can, have a compelling reason for them to invest in us. So the state of IVC is it's in limbo, and it's on hold. And
have you done any first prospective LP meetings like this yet?
No, I haven't done that. And I was in the midst of some where, they were really introductions of people who would introduce you. And so what's quite interesting is this actually leads me into like your next question is, what is the state of these LPs at this stage? So as I was telling you earlier, I was on a call with a kind of a group call with a bunch of VCs from Los Angeles, probably 20 or 30, some of the biggest, some smaller ones, actually from all over the country. And they're all in different stages, which is quite interesting. So one was they actually had raised their fund and they're ready to deploy, which is, I think, a fascinating place to be right now if you're ready to deploy
Maybe
funds.
very lucky.
Right, because you probably will be picking some certain kind of companies, which we can talk about later. But most of the funds who had, where they're on their first or second fund, really the big conversation was, how do we help our portfolio companies? So really the state of VC right now is how do we really help our portfolio companies either survive or succeed in the midst of this pandemic, right? Which I think it's probably the conversations you're having as well.
That's right. That's what I'm hearing. I mean, prospective people we've been talking to, or even some of our companies who are trying to raise capital, in some cases have seen people pull back because they're saying, we need to reserve for the other investments we've already made. So for sure. And I've seen this in prior eras as well.
Prior downturns.
I'm old.
Sure. Yeah, but there's the 2001, the 2008, and what's interesting is a lot of the guys in the call were saying, hey, this is really like the 2001 kind of bubble that's bursting, even though it's not really a bubble, but that's how you could characterize the state of, where VC
activity.
Yeah,
but there's also the most dry powder already deployed, committed at least, and whether it's all there that there's ever been, right? So on one hand, that could keep it going.
Yeah, so right out of this, if it lasts just a few months, that money can be certainly dispersed in the right way. But so it's quite interesting to see. So, but I think we have VCs in three stages. Ones that are trying to raise, like me, or in the process of raising. Some have money to deploy, and they're making those decisions. And then some are portfolio management stage. And I think that's the one that's the scariest and probably the most interesting for these startups, because they're like, all right, what do I do? And I think they're really on the ball of saying, hey, look, SBA loans, look at some of these other opportunities, maybe stop your hiring at this stage. And so they're really just giving the advice on like, how do you ride out this for the next 6 months to a year, so that you can succeed in the long term. And I think that's part of the bigger conversation that happened on at least the call I had last week and with my buddies over in Hong Kong. The other one I think that's quite interesting is, all right, so these investors who have money, where are they deploying it? And the obvious is it's in some sort of health tech or life sciences where there's some breakthroughs, and ed tech. Those are kind of like going to come out of this pandemic as kind of the hot areas, right? Especially ones that are specifically relevant to solving some of the problems, like we all know the stories of why Zoom has become, they were already a unicorn, but obviously they had to turn up their bandwidth a little bit and reserve a few servers and their AWS or wherever they're hosted.
They're probably on all the big platforms now.
Yeah, they're probably like, hey, let's take over this warehouse so we can manage the whole world. Companies I think that are quite interesting, and so you'll see a lot of these VCs double down, right? They'll double down on the companies in their portfolio where they see that opportunity, even for short-term success. So that was quite interesting. That came out from the time. But again, these are just short-term thoughts as of a week ago. The reality is, Carrie and you and I, we probably have a similar perspective in this is, we don't know the future. We're not prophets or Nostradamus. I mean, MC Hammer was probably the closest prophet to what we had today when he said, "You can't touch this." So he it's a great song for
this time.
And then Kanye West is like, hey, I got my church service, I want to go global. And I think going global is probably not the thing to talk about right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, we don't know the perspective, having to kind of redact what I'm saying is we just don't have a very clear, we can say, hey, we think it's going to go here, but as I was talking about earlier, I'm not a macroeconomist, but we're in some dire straits as far as some of these things go, and a lot of startups won't survive. They were in trouble before this happened, or they were in the midst of weren't able to raise what they needed to, and were things got stuck. So the sad news is going to be a lot of companies that may not make it.
Sure.
But anyway, so the state of VC is, it's in great transition, and so that's the VC side of things. I just want I'll let you go. I think there's probably better questions to ask at this stage. But one of the other sides of it is, okay, well then, if you're VC raising like we are, and you're talking to limited partners, what are they doing? Well, what the truth is that limited partners, these investors or family offices, at least the ones that we are talking with, they're in three areas. They're in the more public markets, they're in real estate, and they're in alternatives like us. What they're looking at right now, not necessarily real estate, but they're looking at the public markets and going, great, it's a great time to buy. And so they're looking at their investments and going, I'm going to play in the market for a while because now I can find deals.
If you believe that volatility is going to settle out.
But what I've seen is that's the focus. And so in a few months, when things maybe stabilize, then we'll have the conversation again. And that's what I've gotten back from some of these LPs I've been talking to is, let's talk again in a few months, once we have some certainty of what's going to happen, and that kind of conversation. So that's my 2 cents of wealth of knowledge.
That's helpful. That's helpful.
At least what I've seen.
So let's
and then probably the last part in Asia. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, just from an Asian perspective, they were coming out of the woods, Carrie, and now things are kind of redacted with people returning to Hong Kong and Singapore who are sick, and so they've had to kind of push back on kind of moving forward, or pull back on their steps forward, which has been troubling to see as well. So we thought they were out of the woods, but they're not quite.
Yeah, and I think that's the big fear that a lot of us have is that is this going to sort of temper a little bit here, but then come back in the fall or the winter, and I think that could create a tail on the uncertainty.
Yeah, that's some of the unknowns. Sure,
that's right. So as you think about you've gotten here to Orange County. I always like the outsider perspective once people get their feet a little bit on the ground here. I mean, how do you think about Orange County as a place to build companies, to invest, to really build a culture of high growth startup life?
Well, look, so I think we all know that there's great centers for startups in the U.S. and it's not just Silicon Valley. You've got the big cities like New York as well, of course, and areas like Austin or Boulder and others that are very strong already. I think the case for Orange County is strong because LA is the 5th or 6th in the world of VC money invested. So we all know that into Los Angeles in general for investment on startups. A lot of those there's legacy companies that are content type companies like Snapchat and Tinder and some of these other startups from several years ago. But there's also a great fintech presence. There's also even cybersecurity. You go down to San Diego and there's some great hardware investment and life sciences. So you've kind of got that whole kind of I don't know what you call it, from LA to San Diego. This kind of whole region, right? This whole regional play of opportunities.
Yep.
And Orange County is great because you've got UCI, you've got things like the Cove and Elementz and what you're doing at OC4, Carrie, and some of these other places where you're seeing these opportunities. I mean, the thing that's challenging is there's not necessarily critical mass here yet. So the opportunity is to grow that critical mass.
That's right. So raise your hand if you're here, right? Let us know if you're here. And
I think the networking that we do and that you're able to do, it actually is very helpful, Carrie, because that's how we get to meet each other. And look, we're all about sharing deal flow. I think any VC that doesn't want to share deal flow is probably not in the right mindset. I mean, we're all about, I'll lead around and how else can you come in? Here's a great startup we're looking at. They're not in our wheelhouse, but they might fit for you.
That's right.
I think those are the conversations that most VCs would normally have anyway. And, how about doing that here?
Yeah.
One of the things I'm doing, I know I'm relatively new here, but one of the things I'm doing here in Orange County that me and another gentleman were putting together, Irving Cow, was this thing called the OC Society, or the VC Society of Orange County. And really what it was pulling together other VCs who are here in Orange County, who are actually just work and live here. So we can talk about deal flow, syndicating deal flow, and talk about our perspective on stuff. Because I think,
great idea.
So that's definitely one of the things I saw is just an opportunity to pull in together a number of other fund managers here in Orange County to talk. So I think there's great opportunities here. Like from your side, Carrie, like where do you see the benefits of being here versus just being like in downtown LA? What is it for you that makes it compelling?
So I think for me, it is that which is a bit of a contrarian viewpoint, but this idea that you can have a whole life. And I think that you build better companies for a longer period of time when you take a whole life perspective of the people involved. And I think Orange County offers a whole life of live, work, play, community that is unmatched anywhere, potentially anywhere in the world, but certainly here in the region and in California. So I think you've got great diversity. So I was on some of the other discussions I've had, we've talked about this idea that you've got lifestyle brands and you have real estate and you have all this diversity of industry that we just need to intersect with technology. And we have the potential to have great breakthrough innovations here. So I think it's the whole life and this opportunity of this next wave of innovation where you take leaders of various industries that maybe haven't embraced software or data or other elements that will get embraced because it is going everywhere, that we have that ability to really cross and collide those here.
Yeah, I think so. This is a great place to operate from. I think lifestyle-wise, for startups, it's a great place for them to be. I think it's unmatched. I mean, this is probably the best place to live in the world, right? So why not? Why not run your company from here? Yeah,
that's right. And I think as people get through the other side of this crisis, they're really, a lot of people are probably rethinking their life situation and going, okay, where do I want to live? And that could lead to people leaving here because they want a more rural existence, or they want something else. But I just
maybe off the grid.
We've had this situation even in the entire country where people are moving less now than they have in, I think, a long time. I want to say close to 100 years. And mobility is actually easier, but people aren't moving. And so there's a lot of reasons why, I think, but something like this could be that kind of shock that changes that. And so then you say, okay, now we have the world accessible to us, either because we can have a distributed team and we can recruit anywhere, or we have the best place to live anywhere. So for the people who really want that lifestyle to offset their work, this is a pretty amazing place.
It is. And I think, my perspective is, I think I've traveled to like 60 countries in the world in my lifetime, and the world's flat. I'm a big believer the world is flat, and you can be headquartered from anywhere and have teams around the world, and I think it should be a very normal way to live, and I think that's the internet has made that possible, and that's how we ran our company in the Philippines. We were in Santa Monica, we had a large team in the Philippines, and so that's I think that's quite interesting to have that perspective, because I think it's the norm in many ways. And when people say, hey, I'm just here, I have my team here, really the perspective is any growing company is going to have a dispersed team to survive, because there's great talent everywhere, and if you can leverage them and know how to do that, that's strong. For us as a fund, one of the things that we like is we were investing here in the US and in Southeast Asia, and there's a number of agents here in Orange County that we want to catch the ear off to say, listen, there's an opportunity to invest back in Southeast Asia to see growing companies there, and opportunities to invest here as well. So we want to see obviously both perspectives here, as I think Orange County has the second most population of Asians in the world, outside of, in the U.S. at least.
Yeah,
So
totally makes sense.
It's a great place to be, and I would think I'd want to raise my family anywhere else. This is a great place to raise my family.
That's right. So a couple last quick things. I mean, one,
sure.
What advice do you have for founders here? I mean, you talked about, you looked at 600 companies in the last year. What things really stick out to you as the things founders should be paying attention to make themselves really attractive?
Yeah, so the ones that made it to our top list, there's obviously a bunch of criteria we looked at and we scored them, and all these, there was a pretty rigorous exercise that we did, but there was a few things that stuck out with these companies that made them in that space. The first one is the founders were subject matter experts. They really had experience in the industry, whether it was or in fintech or these guys that are on that list are there because they really understand the business very well, and they're able to build a startup that attracts that. The other, absolutely, it's a non. If there's a great product there that doesn't have a market, it's very hard as a VC to say, well, this is great, let's invest in this, unless there's a real long term of a long view of R&D as an investment, which probably is not the first thing that comes in a VC's mind. And so the market research, I'm very, very interested in knowing, if it's in real estate technology, who are the players in this market space? Who are they trying to compete with? Who are they trying to disrupt? And we all know in market, you're either going to disrupt a market, you're going to augment a market, or you're going to create a new market. And probably the create a new market is obviously the outliers that have come around, like Facebook and Uber and all these Airbnb that have kind of created these new marketplaces that never existed before. The startups that most of who we see will be ones that are going to either augment a market, or create this efficiency that hasn't been seen in the market before. And so it's not really good enough to be in that place unless you really see that they're going to be able to do that. And that's the future that at least we look at. And so those two things are absolutely critical. Is the guys have a long track record of will this product make a difference in the marketplace? So those are two things I always look for.
That's great. I think that's super instructive for founders. So last thing, what I always ask my guests is, share a piece of advice or a key lesson. So as you think about Orange County in particular, since we really try to focus here with SoCal as well, what advice or lessons do you feel like you've learned along the way, whether it's through your agency or your own business, or sort of what's gotten you to here that you'd love to share with others who were listening today?
Yeah, I think the life, it's actually a very personal lesson. So my son is 28. He actually works for Facebook in New York right now, and is an excellent product designer. 6 years ago, he almost died. He was critically ill. He was in the hospital, and thank God, in San Francisco, he had doctors who were brilliant, who saved his life, who were working severe respiratory illness and pneumonia and RDS, and so. By God's grace, he was saved, and he, he's alive today, and he's 100% healthy.
Amazing.
And at the time, I was running my offshore, product agency, and everything just landed in perspective at that stage. Where nothing else really matters except your family. At the end of the day, you can have a business fail or succeed, and the stress of that, or a big investment. There's levels of obviously importance, and those obviously those things are very, very important, but when you're really close to losing one of the closest people to your like your children, everything just kind of changes, and the stress of a client who's upset about something because some button's the wrong color, or or the server's down for a couple of hours or whatever it is. It's incomparable. So I always think my life lesson is all about perspective of going, we're through it, but in perspective, there's things that are much more critical and important, and it's having perspective. That's it.
Yep, I think that's great. Well, Niall, thank you so much for joining me today and for coming to Orange County and setting up a VC fund and investing here locally in the community and everything as we try to keep moving things forward. And as I say, accelerating OC. So you're definitely doing your part, and great to have you here today. And I'm sure this will be a conversation we continue from here. So we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Kerry. I really appreciate you having me on, and hopefully my perspective was helpful, and stay safe out there. Okay.
You too. Be well.
You've just listened to Accelerate OC. Join our live recordings every Tuesday morning at accelerateoc.com, or listen, like, and share anytime from your favorite podcast spot. Let's accelerate OC together.